All right, welcome back to the Minuteman Initiative. So, we're getting back into our little mini-series, our multi-part series on modern-day Minuteman layout. So, basically talking about different gear items that are important to have as that kind of modern-day Minuteman and having that focus and that perspective. This is part 5. We took a break from this mini-series to talk about layering in our last episode, but the previous episode in the series to this would be part 4, talking about body armor. Now we're getting into part 5, which we're going to be talking about helmets and equipment related to helmets. The importance of having a helmet, what to look for in a good helmet, and all the equipment that goes along with that as stuff that's going to be getting mounted to that helmet solution. So hope you guys enjoy the episode. We're going to try to break this down nice and simple, and we'll get to talking about it on the other side of the intro. Today, though.
Yep.
This topic today. You've got a special little place in your heart for this topic today.
Yeah, I do. Yeah. Helmets save lives, so.
Spoiler alert.
Yeah. I was fortunate enough to get voluntold to be involved in an air show when I was back in my Army days. Obviously, we were both airborne, me and Jacob. They were taking volunteers initially, but I guess they didn't fill enough slots for the Arkansas Little Rock Air Show. So anyone from Arkansas probably knows about this air show because it's actually a pretty big air show.
Is it an annual air show?
I don't know if it's annual or if it's every 2 years or something.
Okay.
Every other year. The only reason I think it may be every other year is because the previous time that the 82nd was involved with it was 2 years prior. And when they did it, all their chocks got blown into the tree line and they didn't even land on the air show, like where the air show was supposed to happen. So it was just too windy for them. Like they shouldn't have jumped.
Yeah. Long
story short, we shouldn't have jumped either. So it was just windy. It's just windy there, I guess.
Dude.
So
classic jump master maneuver, dude. Just making up that wind, making up that nautical mile of the wind, dude.
Yeah.
Saying it's like 5 knots. Because you're not supposed to jump. What is it? It's like over 15 knots. You're not supposed to jump or something.
Yeah, I think it's over 15. I don't quite remember. It's been so long now. I was never a jump master, so if they told me to jump, I was going to jump basically. But
yeah, they always lied about that.
Yeah, in this situation, actually, I know for a fact they lied about it because so we went in with 6 birds. I think we jumped We either jumped C-130s with the middle rows taken out or C-17s. I think we jumped C-130s with the middle rows taken out because I remember it being roomy.
Yeah.
We're jumping Hollywood, which is basically no rucksacks or anything like that. So nice. It's like it was supposed to be a really good jump. Like you jump in Hollywood. But in the back of my mind, I'm like, I know that they already had issues there previously. I didn't really like to jump, honestly. Like, I'm going to be completely honest. Like I was airborne, but after like 10 jumps roughly, I was like, yeah, I've had enough, kind of like I'm
not learning to love this, like people say.
Yeah, no.
You always have people that are like, yeah, you just, you got to get the nerve shake, and then you've done like 30 jumps and you're like, this sucks every time.
Yeah. No, it wasn't. It kind of got to the point where it was like, it was cool at first, but now I'm kind of just getting tired of it. You know? And which it was cool at first, I will give it that, but the more you do it, just the more it was just like, man, this is kind of just annoying. And is it actually worth $150 extra a month? Not really.
No.
But anyway, so getting to the story. So I get voluntold. They didn't fill enough slots of volunteers to go jump this Hollywood jump. That was supposed to be awesome. Oh yeah, by the way, it was on the weekend, so it was on a Saturday.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I about missed it too, which that would have sucked. But it's like the one time I've ever slept through my alarm.
Oh,
I've never slept through my alarm. That morning, I woke up with my alarm just going off, and I was like, "Oh no!" I looked out my window, and they were forming up the chocks, like to get everyone in line. They're going through looking at people's dog tags and stuff like that, and going through the roster, making sure everyone's there. And they're already formed up outside my window. So the only uniform I had prepared, ready to go was my garrison uniform. I remember that because I had like everything in my pockets already, like pre-staged from the day before. So I just threw that on because I was like, dude, and I ran out there. They didn't even notice.
Wow.
I was just like, whatever, dude. Plus it's a Saturday. I don't think anyone would have actually gotten mad, but like if I missed it, they would have gotten mad. But like if they saw me coming in late, they probably been like, dude, come on. But anyway, so we go jump. We had to fly from North Carolina, obviously, all the way to Arkansas. So it was like a 6-hour flight, I think. Right around. It's like the same thing as flying to Louisiana.
Yeah.
I guess out of the 6 birds, only 3 birds jumped. The other 3 turned around because of wind. So that doesn't make any sense, that alone. That should have been a canceled flight right from the get-go, I guess. But, of course, I was on the bird that decided to jump. So we jump. Everything was good. They had, I think 2 or 3, maybe 4. I can't remember very well. But, which you guys will know why here soon. But they had these asphalt, landing strips. So they had the tarmac.
Tarmac, yeah.
That all your jets and everything was flying off of. Obviously, we came from North Carolina, so we just flew in and jumped. The idea behind it was we were supposed to hit the ground, rendezvous at these buses at some end of the field. I can't remember which end. But we were supposed to get to these buses. We're all going to load up, drive back to, I think, in one of the Air Force bases in Arkansas, and then fly back. And that was going to be the day.
So all pretty much in one day. It was going to be like a one-day turnaround. So you're basically going to jump in for the air show, show a little Army paratrooper demonstration.
Yeah, and you can find videos on YouTube. It was like 2012, I think. So if you look up 82nd jumps into Arkansas or Little Rock, Arkansas Air Show 2012, you'll find it.
Okay.
There's actually a video that my buddy just sent me like the other day, and you can hear a guy go, "Oh no, one of them landed on the asphalt or something." And he sent me the text and he was like, dude, you can actually hear an old guy in the background say, "Oh no, someone hit the asphalt," or something like that. Because I was like, what the heck are you sending me? He was like I knew it was the air show, but I was confused why he sent it to me.
Yeah.
But anyway, so I'm coming down from the sky. I could tell the winds were pretty heavy just by you can look down at the ground and you can see how much travel you're getting. And I was like, dude, it's we're getting blown pretty hard. So I tried to pull slips. I was aiming for grass. Obviously, I wanted to land on grass, and I thought I was going to land on grass. I remember my toes, my feet coming down and landing on the grass. Well, I came in almost backward, but sideways toward my left side, because that's the side that I end up hitting. And I guess my whole body landed on grass except for my head. My head actually ended up hitting the tarmac. So that's what hit the asphalt. So all I remember is my feet touching down. That's it. I just remember being sweet, I'm hitting grass. Poof, lights out. I don't remember anything from there. I'll kind of explain what happened afterwards, because I just got told by guys afterwards. But basically, I woke up in an ambulance. That's the next time I remember. My eyelids were sealed shut with blood. I remember looking at my hands; they were covered in blood. And I just remember I was strapped in, so I couldn't move around too much. But I just remember wiggling my toes and being like, all right, I'm not paralyzed, so I'm good. I don't really care what else happened. But anyways, long story short, you have to collapse your parachute when you land. You have to collapse one side of your risers. And since I was knocked out, I couldn't do that. It was windy. So when I got knocked out, it ended up dragging me down the wind actually pulled me down the tarmac. So I just got drug up and onto the tarmac and then down the tarmac.
Dang.
I think I went 150 feet is what the guy that ended up jumping on me said. He said I would have gone the entire tarmac just the way that was getting drug.
Yeah.
He said, yeah, you would have done the entire thing. But he got out of his chute fast enough, ended up jumping on top of me, collapsing my riser. And then he said he started calling for medics, threw me in C-spine.
Mm-hmm.
He got selected. He made it through part of the Q course. He was going to be a medic for the Q course, which is perfect guy to find me.
Yeah.
He did all the right things, but he ended up getting hurt or something and ended up coming to 82nd.
Okay.
But So he did good, and then a couple of my other buddies showed up eventually. Like they were like just grabbing my gear and stuff. But yeah, long story short, I mean, my helmet. Like if I hadn't had a helmet on, probably been a bad day. Like
might not be here.
Yeah, or have extreme TBI probably, or
yeah,
all bad. But also, what was weird is, so I got all my gear returned to me. And I had I had really bad rug burn or road rash.
Yeah.
So I lost basically half my face. Like they called me Harvey Dent for a long time at work.
You looked like Two-Face 100%. I saw the pictures.
And then I ground down my left hand. It got trapped underneath my reserve, I guess. Like just exactly where I had it probably when I jumped. But it got trapped underneath my body and it got drugged down. They said I lost close to 2 liters of blood from that, so it's like a lot of blood loss. Like my buddy said that he dumped my helmet out and it was just literally filled up. Like he said it felt like dumping out soup out of a, I don't know, like a pressure cooker or something. Dang.
Yeah.
But he was just like, yeah, I mean, so he handed me all my gear, so all my garrison uniforms got cut off me, and I was just like, that sucks. All of it was sewn on. Like I had sewn name tape, sewn
it was all
ranks. I had my nice boots. Yeah. So it all got cut off me. I was like, whatever.
They cut your boots off too?
Yeah.
Oh, that sucks.
So it all got pretty much wrecked. They just cut my laces on my boots, but my boots were stained with blood.
Oh yeah.
That suede just soaked it all in. So I just turned those into into just field boots, like an extra pair of field boots.
Yeah.
And went and got new garrison boots, but
did you how long did you just get on a plane and fly back, or did you go to a hospital? Or
I went to Little Rock's main hospital, I guess. I was in ICU for 3 days. They thought they were gonna have to do skin grafts on my hand.
Mm-hmm.
They ended up just letting it heal. It took 6 months for it to finally close up.
You still got a crazy scar on there.
Yep. I had my middle finger's tendon was exposed. They were like, "You're lucky you didn't damage it," but
yeah,
you could just see it looking into my hand. It was just
gnarly, dude.
Looking at the insides, but yeah. And then when I looked at my helmet, I was like, "Dude, it's so weird," because I ended up getting this hole in the back of my head when I hit the ground, and I started looking at my harnesses and I guess one of my nuts came off.
Oh.
And the bolt was exposed.
Oh.
So I had padding, so it was covered by the padding, but the padding had gotten compressed enough.
Yeah.
That just barely punched into my head, and that's what gave me such a bad bleeder on the back of my head, was that it didn't do any skull damage, but so the helmet still protected me, but it also hurt me as well. So
yeah.
Wear a helmet, but also make sure your helmet's
rigged up right,
because you never know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's wild. Yeah, it was crazy. I was actually in Afghanistan at the time, and I remember getting back from a long mission. And I was thinking about this while you were talking. In the last episode, we took a break from the Modern Minuteman layout series, which, I mean, in the intro, I think we'll probably cover it. But yeah, this is part 5 of that series. We took a little break and broke down layering. And I think I told a story at the beginning about being out on mission and being really cold and stuff because I didn't have proper layers on. And I'm trying to remember, but I think that ended up turning into a multi-day thing. And I think, what time of year was this?
It would have been toward the tail end of your deployment, so it would have been.
Okay. Yeah, never mind. It wasn't that one.
It was on 9/11. That's when the jump.
Oh, okay.
The jump was. I think it was, or maybe the day after. It was right around that time frame.
Never mind. Then it was. I remember which one it was now, but it was one of our multi-day missions. It was we'd been out for 4 days or something, and I remember getting back and I just wanted to go to bed. I was really tired, and they said, "Barlow, you got to come up to the talk. It's urgent." And I was like, "What? That's weird." And I was like, "To the talk?" They're like, "Yeah, First Sergeant and the commander want to talk to you." I was like, "Oh no," So I went up there and they were like, "Yeah, we got a Red Cross report for a family member." And I was like, "What?" And they're like, yeah, your brother got hurt in a parachuting accident, is what they said. And I was like, a parachuting accident? I was like, which brother? They were like, do you have multiple brothers? I was like, yeah. They're like, let's see, Steven? And I was like, in the military? And they were like, what? And they like had no idea somehow that, because you're supposed to be, like, the military has a pretty well set up program for, like, if you're in the military and you have other family members in the military, they have a system in place to, like, protect your, basically your, like, family name, I guess.
Yeah.
So, like, weirdly enough, if you were, like, critical condition and we didn't have additional brothers,
yeah,
I would have probably got sent home from Afghanistan. So because of that, though, they have like a system to like fast alert, you know, if a brother or something or a family member gets hurt in the military. But they didn't find out from the military. They found out from like Red Cross, because one of my other, I think our mom or something, one of our other family members wanted me to know, and they were like, how do we let him know? And because you can't just call me, you know, it's not like you can just call over and talk to me.
Yeah.
So my wife or our mom or something put that in. So they were really confused. They're like, no, I think it was just a civilian parachuting accident. And I just remember being like, that doesn't sound like something Steven would be doing. Like,
just going out and parachuting.
Just for fun, yeah.
I actually thought about doing it,
but they said, yeah, it was in Little Rock, Arkansas. And I was like, oh, he's with the 82nd. So they ended up figuring it out. They're like, oh, it was, yeah. So it was an air show. And yeah, I remember them being kind of like mad about it because they should have found out through the military, you know, not through like
it was poor communication in general, because I guess, like, I heard that my first sergeant was like, he was a new first sergeant at the time. He just came to us like literally like maybe a month before that. And he was like getting on the bus and he's like, yeah, you know, some of the blah, blah, blah. He's like, yeah, some kid named Barlow got messed up, I guess, or something like that. Someone was like, yeah, that's one of your guys, first sergeant. And he was like, oh. I guess he just stormed off the bus like I gotta go figure out what the heck's going on with this guy.
Yeah. No,
like, dude.
They made it like, I thought you were like on the verge of death, because
I was pretty new too at the time. I was like, I remember, because when you get hurt in an airborne accident, they'll offer you to drop your airborne status. Like, if you get hurt bad, like if it's just nothing big, then obviously they don't really care. But
yeah,
like my first sergeant and or my sergeant major and my battalion commander was like, hey, like, we want to let you know, like, hey, if you don't want to jump again, you're perfectly fine. Like, they just want to, like, they do the whole pep talk, like we're not gonna make fun of you. If you're gonna want to drop your airborne status right now, you can drop it. I was just thinking, like, dude, I just finally got through the new guy phase. Like, yeah. I'm finally getting treated like somewhat decent.
Yeah.
But I don't have the rank to show it right now.
Yeah, yeah.
So I don't really want to go to a different unit. Not being like, because if I dropped my airborne status, they probably would have
sent you somewhere else.
I mean, they might maybe kept me there for a while, but I didn't want to play that game. So
you would have gone somewhere dumb too. I bet.
So I was just like, no, I'm good. I'll keep jumping. So,
how soon after that did you jump again?
Well, as soon as I healed, they got me. So, like, I never started losing my airborne status, which is kind of cool. They kept paying me the whole time, even though obviously it elapsed the 3 months. So in about 6 months, like, once I finally got cleared to start like doing stuff, I remember my finger still wasn't fully healed, but the rest of my hand had already sealed up, and then like my base and stuff was pretty much good at that point.
Yeah.
But yeah, they had me jumping. I remember they made me either first or second man for that jump. And I was like, all right. And my jump master, that was my jump master for that flight, was my same jump master for the Little Rock air show. He was the same jump master.
Oh, crazy. He's
like, you ready, Barlow? You ready to get back into it? And I was like, yeah, I'm good. And he's like, just make sure to peel left correctly. I'm like, dude, I didn't peel it wrong the first time, dude.
Yeah.
Like, they were giving me crap. And
It's
just classic stuff. They try to blame you, and it's like, dude, it was just unlucky, honestly. I came in too hard, and the wind was too heavy. Like, you screwed up, guy.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. When the wind's that heavy and you're,
At first I was like, yeah, the winds are way too heavy just by looking at it. But then I found out that like 3 out of the 6 birds flipped around because the wind was too heavy. It's like, all right, come on now. You can't blame me on that. Like,
yeah, sketch.
I didn't get knocked out any other times. That's the only time I ever got knocked out. So it's like, I don't know.
Dang.
But,
well, good thing you had a helmet on.
Yeah.
That's what we're going to talk about today, ladies and gentlemen. Let's be real, probably just gentlemen. I don't know if we have many ladies listening here in the old Minuteman initiative, Minutemen initiative. But
and if so, good for you.
Yeah, that's awesome. Let us know. Let us know. Never mind. I was going to get crazy multi-gender on it, but
no, dude.
Nah, dude, we're done. There's only 2 of those, in my opinion.
Yep.
So that's what we're going to be talking about today. Well, not that, but I mean helmets. Yeah. There's not a lot to talk about in that. There's a male and female, and that's it. So.
Yep.
Whoa, dude. Showing my hand. So yeah, helmets are important, and it is something that we do believe is one of those items you need to have in your assortment of gear. As a Minuteman, as a modern day Minuteman, I think it falls in the same category as all this other stuff. It's something that you need to get sooner rather than later, and it's something that you need to have pre-set up. And today we're not going to just talk about helmets, but we're going to also get into some of the helmet-mounted equipment as well.
Yeah,
because that's really you start thinking about like what is the point of a helmet, and in today's kind of modern fighting style, a helmet's a lot more than just melon protection.
Yeah, it's actually a form of LBE. It's a form of load bearing equipment. And I think it's probably the most important reason. Like, obviously, yeah, it protects your head.
Yep.
From getting,
and it is part of your armor.
It
can be.
Your brain's splattered all over the place, but
yeah.
And whether that's just from smashing into some asphalt or actually taking on shrapnel from explosions or whatever it may be, but dude, it is a form of protection for sure.
Falling, having debris fall on your head, even like, dude, you start mobbing pretty hard in a vehicle, and you start bouncing up and down pretty quick. I can't tell you how many times I've been romping in a tactical vehicle, and I was like, man, I'm glad I have my helmet on.
Dude, even not a tactical vehicle.
Oh, yeah, just any vehicle.
I'm going to say my Tacoma, I got that rack that runs over the passenger side. Dude, people smack their head on that all the time.
I've flipped my head on that a couple times. Whew. Yeah, dude. So, absolutely something you should have. And honestly, it's part 5. Part 4 was armor, and this is kind of the extension. Yeah, coming directly out of armor. Like I said, we kind of threw a little talking about cold weather, or kind of just weather layering basics in our last episode.
Yeah, which is a form of a layout, I would say, but it's not.
It wasn't related to the.
Yeah, it's not related to like these are the essential items. that you need to have in order to be fighting capable. I guess
we just took a little break from the modern Minuteman layout, but so we're back into it, and we're probably gonna have one more part. So I think this is gonna be a 6-part series. So just a little heads up there. But we'll get into it. So jumping straight in, I kind of already mentioned it, but helmets are a lot more than just head protection. It's like Steven said, kind of a form of LEB. LEB, a form of LBE. It's also an extension of your armor. So because of that, this is a piece of gear that you just, again, cannot skimp on.
Yep.
I feel like this is something that we say over and over again. No, but sorry, it's just any of this life preservation equipment, something that's going to enable you to fight, support your gear, and protect you needs to be something that you invest in.
I would agree.
Spend good money on. So
yeah, there is ways to save money within the helmet setup for sure, but And we're going to give, obviously, our kind of what we would suggest and things that we've actually personally used or ran or whatever it may be. But definitely when you're looking at different categories of gear, we always tend to lean toward things that, have a little bit higher price tag, but usually that's because you get what you pay for kind of thing. So that's just the unfortunate way that it is.
Yep. It's kind of like, I think this has come up before, but any of this really niche specialty stuff, you only have a few companies out there doing it. And unfortunately, when you have a few companies doing it, they can really corner the market, and that tends to drive the price up. There's not a giant market out there for fighting helmets. There is in for the military side of things, but really, there's a few companies that make this stuff. So
they're not easy to make either. That's another thing. Like, you got to have, like, if you were going to manufacture it, you would have to have like some pretty extensive like manufacturing equipment, in order to pull it off. So I think there's that as well. Like, you got to have, like, most of these companies have military or law enforcement contracts, so that's like they have the backing in order to have the production of everything. So
right, absolutely. Okay, so some basics. There's really not a ton to go over here, so I'll just kind of cut right to it. There's basically two. Let me back up for a second. There's a lot of types of helmets, like as far as different cuts, different styles, different coverage options, different concepts on like what a helmet should do. But as far as the different categories, I'm going to break it down into two main categories. You've got your bump protection or non-ballistic protection, and then you've got your ballistic protection. So those are the two that you really need to focus on. Now, what's the difference between those? Well, it's pretty self-explanatory. Non-ballistic, you're not going to have your rated armor protection.
Yeah.
Bump helmet, it's very similar to the same kind of protection you're going to get out of a properly rated hard hat for construction. But really, it's more along the lines of like a football helmet. As far as like the ability to absorb impact, quality, obviously like a well-fitted, properly designed and professionally made football helmet's going to offer you a lot better protection than just like a random hard hat you put on and buy and put on. So
I would say it's very similar to like a high-end skiing or snowboarding helmet.
Yeah, that's an even better explanation.
Or like BMX or whatever.
Yep.
But
so it's a fitted helmet that's going to protect you from any kind of hazard that that is beneath that ballistic that falls underneath like those ballistic performances. So like high velocity stuff, shrapnel, explosions, bullets, things like that.
It protects you from what the name is. It's a bump helmet.
Yeah.
It's for smacking your head on stuff. Like a bump helmet would have done just fine for me in my situation that I've just talked about.
Yep.
It would have been more than okay.
And weirdly, it might have even been better because it might have not been as much weight on your neck, so you may have been able to keep your head tucked.
Yeah.
And
I was using a ballistic for that situation.
A heavy,
the old
ACH style.
Yeah, the old ACH.
Full coverage. And then you got your ballistic. So within ballistic, you've got basically two levels of protection. Again, you want to be looking. So if you're looking at ballistic helmets, you want to be looking for NIJ rated. We talked about NIJ ratings in the armor podcast or armor episode. So part 4. NIJ, the National Institute of Justice, rates ballistic helmets the same way. Now, most of your ballistic helmets are going to fall under NIJ level 3A. So just a little reminder, basically 3A is going to stop pretty much all your handgun calibers up to 44 Magnum. And it can be ammunition that's fired from longer barreled handguns, but it offers no rifle ammunition protection. So really, on the helmet side of the house, this is where you're getting your shrapnel hazard kind of protection.
Yeah, it's not stopping rifle rounds.
Yeah, you're getting protection from your basically like explosive debris, ricochets, stuff like that is really what you're getting protection from.
Yeah, and I guess that would be more like direct hit rifle rounds. You can have glances, like obviously there's tons of stories about people getting glanced overseas and whatnot, but that's probably more to do with the trajectory of the round more than the actual helmet stopping the impact.
Yeah.
So
yeah, there's tons of anecdotal stories of people getting hit at distance, and it actually stopped it and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Recently,
that's under a certain distance anyways, the NIJ rating. So
right. Recently, they have started to develop better armor. Some people are saying that there's level 4 helmets. That's something that I want to warn you about. I saw it a lot in preparation for this podcast. A lot of companies saying, we have a level 4 or whatever helmet. Technically, right now, there's no NIJ as of right now. I need to be careful with this because there's armor that I think people are loosely using level 4 when it comes to helmets, I'll say. One from a reliable company, and it's one of the ones that we'll recommend, the highest level of protection I could find is NIJ level 3A+, and it's specifically, it kind of falls into a special threat category. So it has all that same protection that we just talked about, except it is actually tested to stop up to a 7.62 lead core rifle ammunition, and that's specifically 7.62 by 39. So that's like your AK rounds and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So it's also supposed to stop or offer some protection, but oddly, it's not the same protection. So I found that kind of weird, but for 5.56 rounds as well.
Okay.
The jump in pricing between these two protections is pretty large. You go from like that $2,000 range up to like, you basically add $1,000 on for that special threat protection. On top of that, there is companies too that make add-on armor panels that you can actually adhere. They literally just Velcro on. They just Velcro onto the exterior of your helmet.
Yeah.
They can plus up your armor protection a little bit. You can also add them to bump helmets and gain some basically level 3A protection.
Yeah.
So,
but then you start worrying about weight and things like that. That's
yep.
I think that's where the bump helmet has advantage, is that it is like, if you're wanting to run something that's like you're not worried about a gunfight and you're just using it as more like LBE, that's where like the bump helmet really like serves a good purpose,
Yeah.
Whether that's just like natural disaster stuff, you just want to be able to run comms and night vision, things like that. I think there's still a place for bump helmets even in combat zones as well, but that's,
Yeah.
it just kind of depends on what you're trying to do with them.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, the decision to go bump or ballistic, it's always been a constant kind of conversation. And there's always different opinions on it. I think it's kind of one of those things where perfect world, you have both. You have a setup for both.
Yeah.
I think, like Steven said, there's really good situations where a bump helmet is nice. And there's situations where you want to have a ballistic helmet. Recently, I've kind of tended to lean more towards, if you could only get one, you should probably get a ballistic helmet.
Yeah.
I think kind of going in line with what we talked about in the last episode, getting kind of thinking about worst case scenario, looking again over towards Ukraine and Russia and their situation there. There's a lot of environmental hazards and situations where having ballistic protection is going to be important.
Yeah.
But I think regardless, your top priority shouldn't necessarily be ballistic protection. And I don't want this to be misconstrued, but I think having the ability to carry some of this important equipment, a helmet makes it the easiest. Like there's a few ways you can carry a lot of this gear, like comms and night vision and stuff that we'll talk about later in the episode. But having the ability to carry that gear is extremely important. Now, a lot of that gear gets very heavy, and then if you add that onto a ballistic helmet, then obviously you've added that weight substantially. So just as like for a personal example, Steven and I currently primarily run bump helmets.
Yeah. Well, it's the same argument behind when you're out and patrolling in the woods, or you like, we run chest rigs a lot too without body armor.
Yeah.
Like I did that all the time, even in the military. Like people are like, oh, you'd never do that. It's like, dude, I did it all the time in the recce world. Like reconnaissance, that's what we did. We rarely ran armor just because it's just too bulky and heavy and you overheat and you die.
Yeah.
Like, that's what it comes down to. Like we're just doing
slow.
Too big of movements, trying to do them pretty quick and quiet. And nothing's quick and quiet when you got a bunch of armor on.
Yeah.
So, so I mean, like I said, everything's got time and place. I think, like you said, you should have both setups. I think you should try to get a bump helmet. I think you should try to get a ballistic helmet, just like I think you should have a chest rig that can be ran just as a chest rig, and I think you should have body armor that you can either throw a chest rig on over top, or you have placards that you're able to hook into it and rock and roll.
Yep.
It's the same thing. I mean, the only reason we're not doing two different podcasts on this is because they're literally the same piece of gear, just one's ballistic, one's not.
Yeah.
They run all the same mounting and all that stuff.
And you can absolutely have an entire helmet setup, and configure it in a fashion that is going to allow you to quickly transition from one to another.
Yeah.
You know, like you can have your bump setup as your primary, kind of all kitted up, ready to go, or your ballistic, it doesn't matter. And then if you're going to do, you know, your use case doesn't require ballistic protection or vice versa, then you can just swap and take your gear from one, move it to the other. If you're like me, you're probably going to end up eventually investing in two entire setups, because it's just nice to be able to throw that on and know it's ready to go.
Yeah, I'm that way with everything, honestly. Like I have different packs set up for different situations as well.
Yeah.
Like I have one pack set up for this, and I even like have different layering systems, different hygiene kits, different everything. Like it's just easier for me. I keep track of things better. Summer season, winter season, I'm able to interchange things I have on my shelf and just repack the bags depending on the time of the year. So I feel like it's easier just having things organized, like ready to go at all times. But that's just the way I work. And maybe it's lazy of me and it's costs way more, but at the same time, it's like less I have to worry about later.
And then you got backups of stuff. Yeah. And as far as like a trajectory to get kind of set up here, and this might be different from how a lot of people view this. Like I said, if you can only get one, I think saving up and getting that ballistic helmet makes sense. If you plan on getting two, another way to look at it is you can get into a bump helmet for pretty cheap. They usually go for around, good bump helmets go for around $300.
Yeah.
In contrast to that, a ballistic helmet from the same kind of reputable company is going to run you anywhere between $1,200 up to $3,000, depending on what level of protection you get.
Yeah.
There's also some carbon helmets that are kind of in the middle, some are more of a bump helmet, and some carbon helmets are blends, and they actually do offer some NIJ protection. So, but they tend to be somewhere in the middle. So, but again, when you start talking carbon helmet, they're on the high end. But what I was getting to is that you can get a bump helmet, and this is actually what I personally have done. So you can get into a bump helmet, you can start setting that thing up and playing around with it, because it's a learning curve. It takes time to figure out, how's this going to ride? How do I want my pads laid out? What kind of, like, do I want to run my comms affixed, or do I want to run them on a band and have my internal pad layout adjusted in a fashion so I can just put the helmet on over my comm headset?
Yeah.
You know, am I going to even run a comm headset? There's a lot of variables. When you add night vision, now you start playing around with, like, what kind of offsets do you have from your mounts? Are you able to articulate into the helmet to keep the center of balance closer to the helmet? Are you running counterweights? Are you running, these are things we'll start to talk about. But it's a learning curve. And I actually really think it's something that you should I see a lot of people look at a helmet. They're like, I like the way that helmet looks. And then they try to copycat that helmet.
Yeah.
I highly encourage people to just get one. And this is where I think getting a bump, and this is why I'm saying it might be kind of weird, because in the last episode we were like, just save up and buy level 4 armor, in the body armor episode.
Yeah.
But in this situation, because I guess it's because there's not really like an in-between for plate carriers and body armor. Your in-between is just wearing LBE. And we do actually say get LBE first and get used to running that, training with that, working with that, and then add your...
It's the same argument that I made. Like, you can get reps in LBE that you can't get with just body armor if you don't have a placard to hook into it.
Yeah.
Just like you can get reps with a bump helmet that you can't get if you just run in... Well, you can still get it with a... But it's just more expensive. So if you can't afford to get it right away, then it's like... And you just want to, like, get into your bump helmet while you save up for your other helmet, then that's a good way to do it.
So you can get a bump helmet and start investing in all the equipment that needs to be mounted to that helmet. And then if you want to get a ballistic later on, then you can just move all of that equipment over to that ballistic helmet.
Yeah.
And basically all you've done is added weight. But now you have ballistic protection. So, something to think about there. Now, kind of getting into that, what are things that you want to look for in a helmet? Well, there's a few attributes that I personally, or I guess we, like to look for. The very first one right out the gate is quality and reliability. And that's kind of been a repetitive phrase that we've used. But again, we're talking about modern Minuteman focus. You're not going to necessarily have any kind of
lifetime guarantee.
That and also you're not going to have you're going to have what you're going to have. It's not like you can go on Amazon and get new parts or whatever. So you really want to have something that's going to stand the test of time, and you want to have probably some backup parts for that.
It sucks getting into it at first, but like once you have it, I mean, if you truly do have something that can stand the test of time, then you maybe have to do a little bit of maintenance here and there. Like as far as like, hey, I'm going to need to like knock some rust off these screws because they're kind of starting to rust out. Like, whatever. Like that's pretty easy. Maybe you spray paint some stuff occasionally because it's getting like rubbed down.
Yeah.
But other than that, it's like once you're in it, you got it. So
right.
Buy once, cry once.
Absolutely. So purchasing from reputable brands, and we'll talk about those in a little bit. Another thing I like to look for is comfortable and supportive suspension. So, that also includes your pad layout. That is extremely important. This is coming from a dude, well, two dudes that have ran one of the most uncomfortable helmet setups you can run for long periods of time.
Yeah.
And I remember the first time I started getting into the helmet game, like, on my own, where I could choose what I bought. It's like night and day.
Oh yeah.
Like the comfort level, the way they ride, the balance, the pad layout, all this stuff is leaps and bounds improved above the ACH.
Yeah.
And for you Marine guys out there, don't even get me started on the Mitch, because the Mitch sucks. The Mitch is, in my opinion, trash compared to the ACH. And that's saying something, because the ACH ain't that great.
Yeah.
So I'm sure there's some hardcore Marine dudes out there that are like, I loved the Mitch and cool dude, but like
you're just brainwashed.
Yeah.
Like to love it.
Yeah.
Because I don't know, man. I've tried on a Mitch. I feel like it just feels like an ACH, but I also haven't worn one for a long period of time. I also think that it has a lot to do with your pads. Like guys would buy like aftermarket pads to throw in their helmet setups, like when they were in. And
which I actually did for mine.
I never did it. I still rock the old weird green, just ugly things. Dude.
Yeah. I bought some because I bought the cold weather ones.
Oh, okay.
I was up here and your pads get like rock hard.
Yep.
And so they make ones that stay soft in the cold.
That'd be nice.
Yeah, it was nice. But still not anything compared to what we have now. So when you're looking at suspension systems, there's a lot of things I like to look for. So obviously configurable pads. Most helmets, pretty much all helmets nowadays, have like some kind of Velcro lining or configuration on the inside of the lid. And then you can kind of configure your pads.
Even then you can do like, you can get the Velcro like adhesive stick-ons that they make.
Yeah.
Companies make them. They're just like circular and you just add them into your helmet wherever you want them.
Yeah. Yep. So that's a good thing to look for. Also, just the way the suspension, like the actual harness itself in the helmet, comes down and kind of interfaces with your chin. It sounds weird, but the chin strap is a big deal. There's a lot of discomfort and annoyance that can come out of a crappy chin strap.
Yeah.
So I think looking at that and a lot of this
stuff, you're not
going
to know until you try it. That's the problem with some of the stuff. But if you go with the brands we're about to recommend here shortly, they all make pretty good, solid stuff.
Mm-hmm. Another thing I like to look for is modularity. Because this is a mounting platform of sorts where you're going to be running very specialized and important equipment, you got to have some modularity.
Yeah.
And all these helmets we're going to reference do have this, but try to avoid proprietary stuff, sticking to that aftermarket support or even that, that company direct support. Like, for example, OpsCore makes parts specific to their helmets that, they make support equipment for their helmets.
Yeah.
But then there's a huge aftermarket, there's massive aftermarket support for OpsCore.
Yeah.
So things like that. So understanding what you need to do. Again, if you've never worn a helmet and you've never got like messed around with the specialty equipment that mounts to helmets, it's going to be kind of a steep learning curve. Thankfully, there's a lot of information out there on this stuff. It's getting more and more so. Lots of guys with a ton of experience that are sharing knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
There's not necessarily a right way, and I want to really drive this home. And this happens. This is true across the board, but I've seen it a lot with helmets because it's so specific and it's so user defined and it's so niche and kind of hyper focused on like specific things and specific use. You get a lot of guys that recommend these very specialty kind of answers for different problems or different or making different solutions for helmet setups.
Yeah.
That's because those people have been running that helmet for a long time and they've found that works good for them. So you might stumble upon something online watching like a Grand Thumb video or whatever, and you might see something you're like, oh, that's what I need to do. And it might be 100% what you need to do. But just like we say all the time, like buying the gear is the easy part. You got to go out and use it. And man, helmets are just one of those things that you just got to put the hours in. You got to stick it on your head. You got to go run around and like literally like go stick it on and go for a run.
Yeah.
Stick it on, go for a ruck. Stick it on and, go hike a mountain. Drive your car. Stick it on and drive your car around.
Yep.
You're going to start to figure it out. You're going to figure out where your harness needs to be adjusted to. If you like it super tight on your chin, if you like it looser, if you want to run it under your chin, if you want to go John Wayne style and strap off,
Yeah, unhook.
Yeah, unsnap.
Do the old dangle.
No, but there's a lot of things that it's a very specialty piece of equipment. It's going to be it needs to be very specialized to you. Play with your pad layout. If you got hot spots that you're creating on your forehead, different things like that. These are things you're gonna have to play with.
And a lot of that you're not gonna know until you have your helmet fully set up.
Yep.
Just because it's not gonna be under that full weight. Like the front pad is a perfect example. Like I remember in the ACH, I'd always get that crazy red square on my forehead because we didn't run counterweights or anything like that on our helmets back then. It was just like you do what you do and you just let your neck and everything else just take it all in.
Just Vulcan mind meld, dude.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dude. So I don't remember where I was going with that, but I was just saying, like, you won't know like where you're gonna get hot spots and stuff until you get it fully set up, or you might get hot spots in different spots than you would once you do have it fully set up. One of the two, you know.
Yeah.
Maybe it takes out the pressure in one area and puts it somewhere else,
and that's why you'll notice too when you look at lid setups that some guys have their, you know, they might run their counterweights in a little bit of a different spot than somebody else, or they might run their IFF device like higher on their helmet or farther back. You know, there's a lot of things that you'll see that there's a lot of variation, and it's because of that. It's because you can move stuff around and configure it accordingly to relieve stress or make it more balanced. That's things you're just going to have to figure out by wearing it.
Yep.
There's no, you know, if you're planning on listening to this episode, buying all this stuff and just setting it in your closet, that's the wrong answer. And yeah, you'll have it and that's cool, but there's going to be a lot of
yeah, you don't want the first time to be using it to be like for real, because there is going to be stuff that you're going to have to move around. Like you can watch a, you know, Grand Thumb or a, you know, Warrior Poet or whatever. You can see how they're set up, and you can be like, yeah, I'm just going to do it like that because these guys are pros, and they are pros. Like they're doing it in professional or have done it in a professional manner. But it's like those guys have it set up for them, and like they're what they view as important or whatever. Most of the gear is going to be close to the same from differing people, but like you said, it's just going to be located in different areas, maybe.
Yeah.
So
another thing that I like to look for when looking at helmets is making sure I get something that's user serviceable and customizable. Kind of goes along with, or goes in line with kind of what we were saying just now, but it's a little bit different. So I want to be able to get something that I can easily get parts for. And a lot of good companies have like parts kits you can buy. Like that's important to get. You want to have extra parts, and it should be something that you can work on yourself. Like you should be able to take the harness out and re-rig it and move the pads around. You know, these are things that you should be able to do. You shouldn't have to. You don't want to get something so proprietary that you have to send it back. Like there's some companies that have weird like silicone gel fusing, where like the pads are like fused to the helmet with some kind of like silicone, like
crazy.
Yeah. And it's supposed to absorb more shock and all this weird stuff. And that's cool. Like, I guess I actually don't think it is, but I mean, I'm not trying to diss any companies that do that kind of stuff, but that's not user serviceable. Like that's just, the layout is what it is.
Yeah.
You want to be able to change stuff around, remove pads. Like if you're going to run comms on a helmet band, like you're probably gonna have to take your top pad out of your helmet.
Top pad and side pads, like they're in line. Basically just like take out what the band is of your helmet in order for it to fit. Maybe not. Some guys go in and like add like smaller pads on the sides just to keep it from wobble, but it kind of depends on how your helmet's sized to your head.
Yeah.
Like if it's a little bit tighter fit, then you probably don't need anything.
Right.
But
yeah.
And then like routing wires for your comms, like obviously there's companies that actually have that built in like to their layout, their pad layout, where you can actually route wires and stuff like that, which is cool.
Super cool.
Because
especially for integrated comms.
Yeah, I'm a believer in keeping that stuff all within the helmet if you can, just because snag hazards and things like that.
Yep.
So you don't want to rip out your cordage on your comms and just lose everything.
Just raggy taggy, dude. So we want to talk a little bit about some brands that we recommend.
Yeah. Me and Jacob are both rocking that Team Wendy.
Yep.
And Team Wendy, I would say their biggest pro. Like, I mean, they're great helmets, but their suspension system
it's insane. It's so nice. It's kind of accepted across the board that they have the best suspension system, and I would say that I've ran several different helmets, and by far the Team Wendy, well, I wouldn't say by far, it's got one of these other ones I'll mention has really stepped up their game, and I think they're almost on par, but for the most part, Team Wendy suspension systems are are the best.
Yeah.
They use the BOA system for like tightening and loosening, which is really easy to use and extremely nice. It is user serviceable. The harness makes a ton of sense. The pad layout is fantastic. They've got they've thought it out really good, and they have built-in kind of channels and solutions for comm wire routing and stuff like that, like Steven was mentioning.
Yep.
Really good helmets. As far as their quality, they've done a ton of research into shock absorption. So their ability to absorb impact and stuff like that is extremely good, and that's why their pad layout and suspension system is built in such a manner that makes it so good, because they've done a lot of research to figure out that has a ton to do with protection. Protects your neck, protects your head, your muscle or structures in your face and stuff like that. They have bump, carbon, and ballistic options. So lots of good options there. I don't have any experience with their ballistic stuff. I have their bumps, but I have played with one of their carbon helmets. I don't own a carbon helmet, but I've played with it, and it's awesome. But Steven and I both own their bump helmet.
Yep.
And it's very good. They're nice and high cut, so you can integrate comms very easily, stuff like that, which going back to kind of different styles of helmets, I tend to prefer a high cut helmet.
I do too.
That you can integrate comms into easily.
My ears are not low.
Yeah.
So I need that high cut.
Yeah.
In order to get comms up in there.
And we're talking about comms headsets specifically.
Yeah.
So if you don't feel like you want to run a headset, you do get a little more coverage with a non-cut or like a standard cut helmet. You do have them; they do come down over your ears a little more, but generally you're getting adequate vitals protection out of a high cut helmet. So
yeah, and there's so many pros from running like comm headsets. It's like it's hearing protection for shooting for one. It does actually a pretty good job. Like at least higher quality comms, you can move around with them on, and it's not like what are those old school, like the ones that everyone starts with, the electric hearing protection,
like just shooting.
Yeah, for like the shooting,
like Howard Lights.
Yeah, the Howard Lights. There we go. Like those things pick up everything, dude. A plane flies by and that's all you can hear.
Yeah, and it's all at the same volume.
And like if you're taking a step like on gravel, that's all you hear. Where like the Comtacs or like the OpsCore amps do a pretty good job at like you can
spatial awareness.
Yeah, you can actually hear decent while you're like cruising around.
It's kind of crazy actually how well they do.
Yeah, I can actually like hear better, I feel like, and then obviously then you can do comms as well on there, which is another benefit. And
we'll get into headsets in a little bit. But
I was just saying, as far as like the argument of high cut versus like having protection, I feel like having the ability to run comms is far outweighs like being able to protect your side of your head from just getting I mean, you're like, I don't know, it's like the same argument as side plates.
Yeah.
Like
it kind of is.
Like if you really feel like you need that, then go for it, dude.
Yeah.
Like, you can still run comms under it.
Yeah.
But
you definitely can. a lot of headsets are designed to work, like they've designed them in a fashion that makes them fit underneath like a Mitch or a ECH. So another brand is OpsCore. OpsCore is another helmet that we have experience with, and honestly, all around probably the best helmet you can get.
Yeah.
I'll just say like suspension system's not as good.
Gotten better
as
though.
Team Wendy, but their newer helmets, it's like almost negligible. Like I've played with some of their new helmets, and I'm like, feels like
they've taken notes.
Feels really good. I wish that it had kind of that BOA style system, but you can literally put the Team Wendy suspension system in the OpsCore helmets.
Yeah.
So
the old Franken build.
Yeah. The other thing that's really cool where they went out against, or an area that they definitely went against Team Wendy, is their modularity. So
their rails are
the arc rail. It's been around forever. It's super modular. Everybody, like literally anybody that makes helmet solutions like the first helmet that they start making their products for is OpsCore.
Yeah.
And usually Team Wendy will follow after that.
Yep.
So it's if you're wanting some kind of specified setup, somebody probably makes it for an OpsCore helmet.
Yeah, you're going to actually struggle way harder, and we've experienced this running Team Wendy helmets. Like, yeah, as much as their pros are internally with the Team Wendy's, externally with the Team Wendy's is tough, like especially for finding stuff to mount up. Like once you find it, you're good, but
yeah.
And once you come up with a solution, but if you're looking for a way to just not have to worry about that, going OpsCore definitely will help, because pretty much anyone that makes mounts and things like that go on it are going to make something for OpsCore. So,
yep. Yeah, they also have, lots of options. Like they've got a lot more cut options, and they're kind of the industry leader when it comes to helmets.
I would say easily.
They're usually innovating first. They're the ones that have a lot of this like special threat protection in their helmets now.
Yeah.
Again, you're going to spend a big chunk of change for that, but if you want to just go all in, then by all means, be my guest.
Yeah.
No, dude. Yeah, so OpsCore, and then the only other one we're going to recommend, and really between Team Wendy and OpsCore, I think you're going to be perfectly happy. But and I don't, just full transparency, I don't have any personal experience with this brand, but MTech makes like their Flux helmet is really good, and we almost just said OpsCore and Team Wendy, but there's a lot of like dudes that are a lot cooler than me that always talk about MTech. So like people that I know that are like, yeah, I've got that MTech helmet, and I'm just like, oh, sick. Okay, well, you've done a lot more helmet smashing around than I have, so I'm gonna take your word for it.
Yeah.
So it's kind of one of those things that,
it's a good brand. It's
yeah,
it's not going to be like, if you want to be unique and go with, well, not unique because they've been around, but
yeah.
If you just really don't want to support Team Wendy or OpsCore,
then go MTech.
Which I think MTech owns OpsCore, but whatever. Pretty sure one of the two. I don't know.
No, that's Gen X or whatever, or Gentex or something.
Gen X.
Gen X. It's something like that, dude. I can't remember who it is.
It doesn't matter. I know someone owns something that also does helmets. I don't know.
Yeah,
that was MTech for some reason.
Oh man, yeah. The Gentex core, dude. Gentex.
Oh, okay.
Gentex owns OpsCore. That's their parent company. But I was close, dude. Missing one letter.
Yeah.
Yeah. So between those three, and we are going to end it at those three. I think there's not really a reason to go anywhere else. And there's people that are like, what about hardhead veterans? And there's some other companies out there. Just again, it's kind of like the steel armor discussion. It's like, I know they're a lot cheaper. I know that they claim that they can do this and that, but they're not made in the U.S. They're not necessarily beholden to the same standards and regulations. There's a reason why they're not. A lot of those helmets aren't approved for service and for issue.
Yeah.
In the professional realm. Again, we need to stick to what is tested and respected and stuff that works. And between those three we just listed, that's not the end all be all, but I just don't really see a reason why you would deviate out of those three.
Yeah, I don't know either.
Saving money, we're just not the guys to talk to about that, because I just feel like, you start to really split hairs when you get down to like, well, I could save $200. It's like, okay, then save up your money for like a couple more paychecks or whatever, a couple more months, whatever it is, and just buy the other one, because I can't tell you how many times, even in our own circles, I've seen people buy like,
something that they thought they're saving a little bit of money. And
then they end up buying the right thing later. And it's like,
it's like, we try to tell you.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Which it's fine. Some people need to find the journey on their own, but I mean, I can literally think of like 6 people off the top of my head right now that I could just name. I'm not going to, but I could just name them that like they went a certain route, you know, specifically with helmets. And it's like, why? Like you asked, I told you, and then you ended up with what I recommended. And it's not, and I'm not saying that like I have all the answers. Like, you ain't got all the answers, Sway. No. Have you seen that, dude?
No.
You haven't seen Kanye flipping out on Sway in the morning?
Oh, no.
He's just like yelling, you ain't got all the answers, Sway. You don't got all the answers. And he's just like, whoa, calm down. You know, but we all know Kanye is a loose cannon. But, you know, I don't got all the answers, Sway. But yeah, I mean, you can just look around and you'll just find the same brands get mentioned over and over and over again by pretty much everybody. So
yeah,
no need to be a hipster in this world. So
nah, dude.
Yeah,
just spray paint it unique, dude. If you really want to get crazy likes on Instagram or something, I don't know.
Just say crazy likes on Instagram.
Yeah,
yeah.
Get all the crazy following. Just spray paint it weird.
Spray paint it Flecktarn and just get all the obscure camo lovers to come chasing after you. So yeah, anything else that you want to talk about that you think is good to look for in a helmet setup?
No, I think you kind of hit it all. I mean, like we said, just to break it down, I mean, or what I was saying was, you know, Team Wendy definitely has pros as far as like the, you know, the BOA system and all that. Their harness, it works really, really well. Their pad layout, how they can route wires through their pads. They have like basically like laser cut mesh things that it like allows it to run through. I know that's like super. As soon as I said things, I basically lost everyone, but that's all right. But they just have, I don't know. You'd have to play with it to know what I'm talking about.
Like flaps.
Yeah.
Yeah. And like channels.
Yeah.
I don't know how else to explain it.
Yeah, I mean, it's smart. Yeah. It's pretty well thought out. But ObsCore, I think, just for being able to find stuff and actually mount things exactly how you want it, it's just better, like in that regard. So,
yeah, dude, it's
like
way better.
Their rails are just. There's been so many times where I've just been so mad that I have a Team Wendy for that reason alone. It's just because of the rail. Like, I'm like, dude, do they just not have anything for this? And you just have to go on like the witch hunt, dude, to find something that'll work.
Which you usually can. I mean, and it's pretty obscure things that I've found that have been hard to get.
Yeah.
I will say though, when you put that Team Wendy on, that's when you're like, oh yeah, this is why I got this is why I have Team Wendy.
And that's why it's on the list. If it wasn't so awesome as far as how it wears, then maybe not so much. But I mean, they're good quality helmets regardless. Like even their ballistic helmets are solid. So yeah.
Okay, so let's jump into some of the helmet mounted equipment.
Yeah,
start talking about that. So
we kind of talked about comms. Obviously, we'll get into that a little bit more.
Yeah, but
obviously, me and you both agree that that's one of the biggest pros of having a helmet is that you can mount comms on it.
Yep.
It's way like it's way nicer. It's way nicer than just running a headband because. If you do go the route that you're planning on mounting them up on the helmet, because you're able to like take your down leads and stuff like that and stow them up on the helmet, and it keeps it all nice and neat, as opposed to it just being like flopping in the wind. I mean, you could do that with just a headband as well if you know what you're doing, just like the Velcro things onto the earpieces. But so yeah, I mean the brands we recommend for headsets are definitely Peltor's, Comtex.
The
ObsCore amps. And the Sordens.
Yeah. and probably in that order, actually.
Yeah.
And there might be some pushback from people that are big fans of the ObsCore amps, and that's awesome. But I don't really care. I by quite a bit, I like the Peltors better.
I do too. Yeah, I think sounds better. Some people argue, "Oh no, ObsCore's got better." It's like, dude, I don't know what your ears hear, but my ears hear that the Peltors are better. I've ran the ObsCores, and I 100% think that the Comtex are clearer. And I have Comtech 5s. I've ran Comtech 6s. I would say if you're anywhere from Comtech 5 and on, you're going to be sitting pretty. Comtech 6s have the
6 and 7s have the nibs.
Yeah, the nibs, which is awesome.
Yep. Which is basically, sorry, we're just starting to kind of throw random acronyms out there. I just realized, but the nib is it's an acronym. I can't remember what it stands for, but basically it's an it's a proprietary internal network, very similar to Bluetooth, but it's its own kind of frequency. And it's not something that's going to be, a lot of people start to worry about like getting picked up by, bad guys and stuff like that. It's very short range. It's extremely low power,
like
very
8
short
feet
range.
Or something.
Yeah, I think it's 10 feet. I think you got to be within 10 feet of somebody. So it's designed really for like close knit operations. It can leapfrog. So basically, if you have a full team of guys with Comtech 6s or 7s on, they're going to link up with each other, and you do pair them in a certain manner. And you can have up to, I think, 64 users. So you can have a ton, but then only 4 can be talking at a time. So you can have them set up for Vox, or they actually have a little push-to-talk built into the headset specifically for the nib, which is kind of cool. So, yeah, basically, without having to use the radio at all, which is obviously going to send out a big signal, you guys can be in comms as long as your team is all close enough and you have, a chain of guys within 10 feet of each other. So, like, if Steven and I are within 10 feet, he can have someone 10 feet away from him and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
And it'll kind of daisy chain or leapfrog through there.
If you are running those, don't just, like, build your SOT off of staying within 10 feet, because we're not saying that. But, proper spacing is more important than...
Yeah.
But if you're like doing some door kicking or something like that, then obviously they would have their benefit if you're like in a loud area, or like if there's already gunshots being shot, or like if it's just loud in general.
Yeah, and that's a super random thing. I was just explaining what nib was, but
I think it has pros. Like I remember like doing reactive contact drills, and you're shooting under fire, especially like when I was a saw gunner, like you're just running that belt fed, dude, and you're trying to yell like, hey dude, let's pick up and move, and like the dude's like not even that far away from you, and he's just shooting over there, and you're just like, oh yeah, that guy can hear me all right.
Yeah, dude.
Like he just got his ear pro just jammed so far in his ear that it's just like, all right, well I hope when I start moving, this guy gets the picture, because he can't hear me at all.
Yep.
And it's frustrating. It's usually new guys that do that, and you just want to punch them in the head.
Yeah.
But
sometimes you do.
That may be a real story. I don't know.
Yeah.
That may or may not have actually happened.
Yeah, so kind of back to different types of headsets. Yeah, so honestly, between all three of them, I would say the MSA Swordens are really good. Out of all three of those, the Swordens are way cheaper. You're going to spend way less money on the Swordens. And man, I wish I could remember who, but there's a company you can buy them through. It's right on the tip of my tongue. Maybe I'll try to look it up whenever we move on here, and if we start kind of talking about it, I might try to snag it, but unless you want to try to. But basically, there's a company that makes the MSA Swordens, and they don't make them. They're made, but they take them and they modify them and improve them, and you can buy them from them. And I think that's from the ones I've played with. Those seem to be the ones that are worth getting. I think they're really well made, and they've done a lot of good things internally, electronically to them to make them improved. It's a little bit outside of my knowledge base as far as what all they do to them, but I know I've just played with both of them side by side, like standard Swordens and the modified Swordens or improved Swordens, and it's actually quite a bit better.
Yeah, I don't remember.
So,
and I can't find it either. So
yeah. But this is the kind of stuff that you should be doing a lot of research on before you pull the trigger anyways. I want to jump back to Peltors versus amps a little bit, and why I personally like them a lot better. I think the Peltors are more comfortable on the head. I don't know what it is about it, but maybe it's just my head shape, but I don't really like the mounting system that the amps use as much.
I don't either.
how they're like on the back of the helmet and they like clamp down onto the front, especially if you want to go like passive listening. You can't just pop the Peltors off your head, whereas on, or pop the amps off your head, they like swing way out. So they're either locked onto your ears or they're like way out on the sides.
Looking like General Grievous or something, dude.
General Grievous. Yeah. Or with the Peltors, they can actually pop out a little bit. You can have them locked on, or you can actually spin them up out of the way if you need to. You can actually swivel them up onto the back of the helmet. So
yeah, but you can do that with the amps too. You just roll them back and then clamp them down.
Yeah.
But they're
just
still
cumbersome.
like way like...
It's a lot going on.
It reminds me of like, the equivalent of, like the idea is great. Kind of like when this is a weird analogy, but I'm just going to go with it. But like you watch Transformers and you watch like how quick they like transform, and then you like your kid gets the toy.
Yeah.
And then you actually have to like transform it. And you're like, whoa, dude. Like you got to relearn it every time you do it. It seems like in order to get it back to its initial shape. And I feel like that's what's going on with the OpsCore helmets. Like,
you mean the OpsCore amp?
Yeah, it's like you got to relearn, like when you're wearing the helmet and you got to like try to get it back up there, you got to like relearn the operation to get it back to there, and then you got to relearn it to get it back and to position.
I mean, you build the muscle memory and you get to the point where you can just do it. But
yeah, which I'm sure you would with the Transformer toy if you sat there and did it forever. But
yeah. But the main reason I like the Peltors more is the listening quality. And I've had so many people tell me like, yeah, man, I really like the amps. And I'm like, dude, sick. But the amps just sound like electronic to me.
Yeah, I think so too.
Way more electronic sounding. And I think that the enhanced listening that they have is a bit better. Like, I think it's louder, but I have a hard time discerning how where things are when I'm wearing them.
Yeah.
That's something that the Peltors, I think, are just better at, is that you can, if something's in a direction, like they have good spatial they provide good spatial awareness and directional listening. So they actually do a pretty good job. I mean, it's artificial because it is picking up the sound and it's putting it into your ears.
Yeah.
But it's very similar to if you have like AirPod Pros or like the AirPod Pros and they have that passive listening.
Yeah.
And it just sounds like little holes open up in the back of them and just allows you to hear.
Yeah.
It's kind of like that, but it's like way more quality sounding.
Yeah. I'd agree.
The amps, I think, give you better hearing protection. Than
Probably
the Peltors.
so.
But
send it. My hearing's already done anyway. So.
But that's easily mitigated. You can get the Surefire little plugs that have the little valves on them, and they only allow through like so much, And they make a set that is, and actually both Peltor and OpsCore make sets that are specifically designed to offer more protection underneath those sets.
Yeah.
And I might get them, but
I just haven't had that much problems with it yet.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. My hearing's already not great, and I feel like I get plenty adequate protection. And we've definitely pushed them to their limits. Like
I don't think my ears have ever rang from them or anything like that.
No, but then again, we haven't been in any combat environments recently, so
yeah.
But standing right next to a muzzle brake as it thumps, over and over and over and over and over again, is a pretty good indicator. But I don't know. I think that's kind of negligible. But technically, I think the amps do provide more
actual hearing protection,
decibel protection, and that could be wrong. That could not necessarily apply to the newer Comtacs. But I know that every new generation of Comtac that's come out has been, getting better, obviously. Yeah. So,
yep.
The other thing that you might be able to speak to more is where the amps, I think, actually do beat out the Peltors a little bit, is where the switch controls are on them.
Yeah. I didn't even think about that. Yeah. If you're a left-handed shooter, the Comtacs can suck. I will say that.
Yeah.
I've learned to make it work, but at least on the Comtac 5s, I don't know if the Comtac 6s, I think they are in the same spot.
Yeah, it's the same spot. The 7s are different though. 7s, the geometry of the.
I'm pretty sure you can reprogram them, but
different.
I need to look into that a little bit more. And I've just been too lazy to do it. And every time I go out and shoot, and I end up like accidentally turning off my headset, then I remember like I need to reprogram these.
Yeah.
But then I forget by the time I get back from whatever we're doing. But yeah, it'll because of the way I get my cheek weld on my stock of my firearm of my AR. It sometimes will press the buttons just right, and it'll actually shut off my contacts, which sucks a lot when that happens. I've changed a little bit the way I shoot, and I'm just a little bit more mindful of it, and I don't have issues with it, but I guess the ops core would do a little better in that situation.
Yeah. The buttons
they're like a little bit more inset.
Yeah, and they're not like the geometry of them is a lot different. So they're like just more on the side rather than like on this angle piece that's facing
angled downward.
Yeah. Which the reason the contacts are designed that way is because they were designed to be used underneath like an ACH.
Yeah.
Or they can be used under there. So then you have to obviously get your fingers up like you
up
can't go in from the side.
Yeah.
Because you've got that piece that covers your ear. So
yep.
Makes sense, but something to consider. So kind of, I guess backing up a second, like you might be thinking like, why do I need to have a headset? And you really don't. I do want to say that you don't necessarily need one. I do think though, with the day and age we live in and with this modern equipment that's available and kind of from that modern Minuteman perspective, you're not just getting a headset, you're getting hearing protection. You're getting enhanced hearing, like it can hear better than your ears can. Now, that doesn't mean you make it a crutch because you're going to always have better spatial awareness if your ears are not covered.
Yeah.
But if you're like in a fighting situation, like you're running around, like fighting, having that enhanced hearing is
not
cool.
Just blowing out your eardrums for no reason while you're fighting either is important. So
yeah, very important. And on top of all that, you can monitor communications. You can talk to people. That's a whole other bag of worms, and it's something that we'll visit in future episodes as far as comms specifically. But the capability's there, and being able to communicate is extremely important. It's vital, actually.
Yep.
And you gotta have it. It falls into your coordination. Everything about your capability really comes down to a lot of times to communication. So having that capability while protecting your ears, while having enhanced hearing, while also balancing your helmet is all pros.
Yeah.
If you've never experienced how it feels to wear a helmet with integrated like mounted comm headsets, it is so balanced and comfortable.
Well, it's clamping onto your like the side of your face basically when you have them when you're wearing them. So
it's awesome. It's like
another level of support for the helmet itself. Plus, it's just weight and like a centralized location.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and it's just it's more protection too. Not saying you're getting like ballistic protection out of your headset, but it's just the more secure that helmet is, the least
you're not taking like just willow branches straight to the ears or anything like that.
Yeah, or just whipping the crap out of you. Yeah. But also it's just way more secure. It doesn't shift around as much. It's going to reduce like hot spots and stuff like that. It's nice.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of pros in my opinion to investing in good comms headsets. Now a couple things that I want to break down on that really quick is if you want to go integrated or not. Again, from my perspective, and I know this is just classic Jacob and Steven saying like, yeah, spend as much money as you possibly can. I promise I don't mean to do that. I'm not made of money, but generally it is best to have a standalone headset. And then I really like having my contacts integrated into my helmet. Like I love being able to grab my helmet off of wherever I have it and it's ready and I put it on and I've got comms. All I have to do is plug it into my push to talk and I'm good. I'm integrated. Now if you're in a situation where you're running more reconnaissance stuff, I'm probably just going to, and you're not, you might have your helmet with you, but it might be like in your ruck because
it's just boonie time, dude.
Yeah, just booneying around, dude. I'm going to tell you right now, I'm not a big I'm going to wear my helmet the least amount that I can.
Yeah,
I've always been that way. Like, helmets are cool, and you should have them, but I'm gonna not wear it as much as I can. If it's time to wear night vision, or like we're going to a fight, or like we're gonna be rolling fast in vehicles and stuff like that, like trust and believe I'm gonna have my helmet on. But if we're like, if Steven's making me dig into a serve site somewhere, and
just me making
Steven's just like, get in there with your e-tool. I'm not I ain't gonna have no helmet on if I can help it. So
yep.
With that being said, there is a benefit though to having your helmet configured in a way to where you're just gonna keep you don't have to do any changing of the headset or anything like that. You can just keep your current headset all plugged in and rigged up. You can literally just don your helmet over the top of that.
Yeah, which I think in that situation it's not bad. Like for a reconnaissance element, I don't think it's a bad idea to have it set up that way, because then you're not unhooking from anything. It's also the helmet's taking up less space inside your ruck. There's little things, but
I think that's kind of negligible because your ear prof just folds inside the helmet.
Yeah,
and it doesn't really.
But then when you take it out and put it on your head, then you got ear pro that you got to put back in there, and I don't know. It just kind of
definitely
it's things to think about, I guess.
Yeah, for sure.
Me personally, I have my helmet set up where my headset stays connected, and then I have a separate headset for when I don't want to run a helmet. So
yeah, and I've thought about it a lot, and maybe I will change some things around and make my ballistic helmet set my ballistic helmet up in a fashion that is more, or doesn't have comms mounted and can be more like,
it's time to go
on and off, and then leave my other one all
geared out
completely. Yeah, I don't know. I'll have to play around
or vice versa.
But still, it's something to consider, and that's something you're gonna have to play with and decide what you want to do. And it's something that I'll continue to play with because you don't got all the answers, Sway. So MSA Swordens, we talked about those. Pretty solid. I wish I could look up the company, but maybe it'll come to me while we're going. Probably not. But so some other things I want to talk about on the helmet. Here's a big one: night fighting equipment. This is going to encompass a lot of things.
Yeah.
Why do you need to have it? Well, because unfortunately in today's day and age, it's just what happens at night.
Yeah.
Like if you're fighting anybody that is ready to fight at nighttime, then you're going to be fighting people with night vision.
Yep.
And that's just the world we live in now. And that's changed in like the last, we've had night vision capabilities or night vision technology for a long time, but the amount of just regular people, like civilian level people that are just citizens that I like citizen better than civilian. I think citizen's more proactive sounding.
Yeah.
But anyways, the amount of citizens that have invested in and bought night vision is staggering.
Oh yeah.
Like tons. So even if you're just dealing with like collapse of economy, like,
yeah,
rape and pillage kind of vibes.
Yeah.
Like just random
people
that
are
kind of
night
stuff.
Vision.
There's people out there that are going to be rocking nods. Gotta have it and understand it and understand what can be seen while you're wearing it. And that's a whole other podcast, honestly. And again, we will cover these in depth in the future. And I hope to even have some people on that know more than we do about this topic, because night vision is extremely in depth.
Yeah.
And, we know a fair amount, but not nearly as much as a lot of others. So stay tuned for nod specific stuff in the future. But this is 100% part of your Minuteman layout, is having the capability of fighting at nighttime. So with that, what is encompassed in that night vision equipment? Well, you're going to have equipment and like direct equipment, and then also some support. So obviously you're going to have your nods, which is your NVGs, your night vision goggles. Now this is a whole rabbit hole in and of itself, what direction you want to go. Just to keep it simple, let's say invest in some good quality PVS 14s. It's a monocular setup. I think there's a ton of pros surrounding that setup. Again, this is a different podcast. We'll cover this at a later date. But regardless of what it is, have a good reason for doing it. Don't just do it because some guy on Instagram or some guy rambling on a podcast told you, to go get a certain thing. Do your research, figure out what's going to work for you in your area. And if you're working with buddies, it's probably smart to have the same stuff. That's something that I think is extremely underrated, and it's something that is underutilized as well. There's a lot of, I'm going to buy the coolest, biggest, baddest thing, and then I'm going to kind of flex on my buddies. And I think that's incredibly incorrect. I think I think that is just the wrong way to be. I think it's important to coordinate and have some cross compatibility. Training on the same equipment, running the same equipment, being able to interchange with the same equipment and share and utilize and have parts compatibility, stuff like that is so important for logistics. We talked about it a lot in the rifle episode. This also factors into your headsets. I think whatever headset that is decided upon, make sure they all work with each other, and a lot of these brands will play with each other to some degree. I mean, as long as your radios are all in sync, you're going to probably be good. But for example, just a kind of a specific thing, the Comtac 6s or 7s have that nib feature, so that might be something worth pursuing. So nods, I think, are the same way. And then from nods you get into mounts.
Which
a whole other investment.
Wilcox all the way.
Yeah, and honestly, Steven just said it. I mean, there are other options out there, 100%, but just from what we've seen and from what we've played with and researched and personally have, Wilcox just seems to be the way to go. It's just so reliable, so well built. Unfortunately, they're crazy expensive. Like a G24 mount, you'll spend like $500 on it, and it's kind of stupid. But mounts alone, you're going to spend like handgun pricing on. So,
and that's not even including the J arm, I don't think.
Yeah. And if you get like the Dovetail J arm, you're up into that like just shy of $300, I think. It's just insane. So but again, gotta have good mounts.
Because I mean,
what's holding it.
You got, a $4,000+ piece of equipment. Actually, you can get night vision for cheaper than that depends on what you're shooting for. But we'll say 4,000 plus though. 4,000 plus piece of equipment that you got dangling off a mount.
Yeah.
That thing pops off and that thing drops and hits the ground. That's an expensive endeavor right there. So you definitely want to invest in good mounts. You want to invest in good like bungee systems or whatever you're running to keep it secure on your mount. So just be smart. There's tons of information on how to do that and what to do, and like just getting different ideas from different perspectives and then go out and try and see what works for you kind of thing. Is what I would say. At different mounts with different night vision setups, obviously you're going to have differing like how it's going to ride and depending on the helmet you have and all that stuff. So
understanding like all those little specifics in there, like the breakaway stuff. And some nods, or some mounts break away, some don't. And figure out what you need. Are you worried about getting sideswiped by something or like catching your head on something? Maybe a breakaway is going to make sense there. And maybe you don't want it. Maybe you want to maintain your equipment and risk your neck. So I don't know. There's a lot of there's a lot of things to consider there just in mounts. So
and that's why we say go out and research. But these are things that you have to start researching, and we're just kind of putting together a list of things. Okay, this is stuff I need to look up, and you can be writing it down or just make a mental note. But things to start looking for. And I think some of the companies that we have been dropping, that's like kind of a good place to start, just because you're going to get a lot from those companies right out the get-go.
Yeah.
But
for sure. So another thing you want to have for kind of your support is counterweight systems. So you might say, what's a counterweight? Well, literally a weight that you put in the back of your helmet to counter the weight of your night vision setup that's in front of the helmet. Yep. So if you have your night vision on the front of your helmet and you're running it for hours and hours and hours at a time, which is very likely to happen if you do find yourself in a situation where you're running this, and even if you don't, you need to put yourself in situations where you're training for hours at night under nods, getting used to it. That weight leaning forward, you're going to constantly have to be pulling your head up, especially if you're running dual tubes. They're quite a bit heavier.
Yeah.
You're going to need a counterweight system of some kind to balance that out.
Mm-hmm.
You can also consider or implement battery packs. There are remote battery systems that you can wear on the back of your helmet that tie into your night vision, and it's going to extend your battery life.
Yeah.
So, very worthwhile, especially if you're talking about extended time under night vision.
Mm-hmm.
So multi-day, at night you're rocking and rolling in nods, you need it to last you a few days. Having those battery packs not only gives you counterweight, but it also greatly improves the runtime of your night vision devices.
Yeah.
Getting into, you probably want to have some IR lighting on your helmet. This is kind of a preference, but I think Steven and I both we both run the Surefire. What do we have? The 340V. The
340V.
Yeah. So it's got white light and it also has infrared. So we obviously keep it on infrared, and it's actually, the way we set ours up is kind of nice. So they're actually on, but you have to twist the head. So there's no accidental button clicking going on, because the head has an off position.
Yeah.
So they're off all the time. And then we have them set up to where you can only twist it onto IR, and then you have to go completely past the other way to go to white light.
Yeah.
So it's, because that's a big thing you need to consider when you start getting into the night fighting stuff, is you don't want to accidentally
run your white light.
Yeah, run any white lights at all.
Yep. But you still have it, which is what's nice about the 340V. Like, all you have to do is twist it, and you basically got a headlamp that's attached to your helmet at all times. So if you're doing more training style stuff, and it's all right, guys, we're going white light, so we can kind of break this down. You can just throw them on and light up the area.
Yeah.
Turn it to daytime.
It's super nice. It comes in handy. I mean, it's really nice to have. I like having it as an option.
Yeah.
It's very it's very intentional. You have to intentionally turn it on, which is what you want.
Yeah.
But it's nice if you get to a situation where you need to have some admin light of some kind. It's nice to have that white light, but definitely infrared lighting for the same reasons. You can do full on search mode, under infrared, under nods.
Yep.
And get a lot more lighting. Obviously, you're probably going to have illumination and stuff like that in your weapon system, or you should, but it's nice to have it integrated into your helmet, in my opinion. Kind of in line with lighting is your strobes, or your IFF, which IFF stands for Identify Friendly Foe. Strobes are important. Now, very specific reasons on why you would need it. I think this is where it gets into the weeds on SOP and coordination and stuff, but having strobe devices, I think, is very valuable for coordination purposes.
Yeah.
Coordinating with others, coordinating with other units. Your situation is very dependent. A lot of them have visible spectrum strobe light capability as well. So if you're doing search and rescue stuff for your community, or you're doing disaster relief stuff, just helping out your community, which is we think is part of this whole mission as a modern day Minuteman, being willing to help others that are vulnerable and in need, and help your community. Obviously you're not going to need to be super tactical under nods. You're going to, But a lot of these strobe devices, like one, for example, that a lot of people know of is the Hellstar units.
Yeah.
And the Hellstar 6 is a good one. They make a couple other ones that are, Mantis makes some that are really good. There's a few different ones in there. You can just look up strobe IFF or like in IR strobe, and you'll get a bunch that'll start coming up. But we like the Hellstar 6s. I think they're really good. Now, within those, there's a ton of configurations. There's like, infrared strobe, infrared steady, infrared strobe high. There's like all these different options you can pick. And that's where you're going to have to sit down with others and coordinate and figure out what makes the most sense as far as what to get. But I think they're important. Are they necessary? No, not I said no, not necessarily. They're not necessary, but they can be. And that might sound weird, but it's dependent on you and your SOP. I think the pros outweigh the cons of them, in my opinion, because you can always just not use it, but it's there. They don't weigh a lot.
Yeah.
I hear a lot of people say things like, yeah, but then you're just adding weight to your helmet. And it's like, okay, like ounces. Like, yeah, sure. You can also just take it off. They just Velcro onto your helmet. So they just have a Velcro base. If you're like, I am not going to use this tonight and I want to save some weight, rip it off, throw it in your ruck, or leave it at home or whatever. And
depending on where you mount it to, it helps as a counterweight as well. So
I really adhere to the better to need it, or better to have it, not need it, than need it, not have it.
Yeah.
So, it can come in handy. I think they're very valuable tools to have. So
I think so too. I think, it's worth having for sure. It's worth considering to put on your helmet for sure.
Yep. So some additional things that you might want to have on your helmet. I kind of already talked about admin lighting a little bit.
I think the only other thing to throw in with like maybe like a source of IR is like maybe like a small red light of some sort that you can mount on. It kind of depends on what you want to do. You could also just run like a
little map reader or something.
Yeah. So you can throw on take the old poncho, throw it on over top, do map reading that way.
Yep.
That's kind of the old golden standard. Something we did a lot as just doing the land nav in the military. But red light does really good. It's not, obviously it doesn't like just bloom out like white light does. And especially if you go under like a poncho or two ponchos, depends on how dark out it is to try to mask it, and how much coverage you have. Like if you're in like a thick draw or something, that's going to help you as well. But I think that's a good consideration, something small, not anything too crazy, but if you can find something that's a red light as well, it depends on your mission.
Yeah.
Like you said, you don't want to have like this ridiculously heavy thing up on top of your head. So
for sure.
Weight matters. If you don't need it, ditch it. If you want it, add it. It doesn't really matter. So, but yeah, that's all I got to say about that.
Having good helmet covers is important. And I'm actually a huge fan of helmet covers. Cumbers. Helmet covers. And in some cases, it's actually borderline mandatory. So especially when you're getting into that ballistic protection, it's nice to have covers to actually protect that coating on the outside of your helmet.
Yeah.
A lot of guys paint their helmets. That's cool. I'm all about it. I think if you're running a bump or something like that, you should paint it. A lot of these bump helmets have like a sheen to them, I've noticed. It's kind of shiny and surprisingly somewhat IR reflective.
Yeah.
So spray paint will fix that right up for you, but a cover will as well. I think covers are hard to beat. The other thing you're going to get out of covers is like cable management. A lot of smart covers. There's some good ones out there. TNVC makes some really good ones. They make like the Mohawk and stuff like that. We actually run the Agilite helmet covers.
Yeah.
Big fan of those. Lots of like tubular webbing and stuff that's built into them and mesh and things, so they still breathe and stuff, but they allow you to route your cable and
all that good stuff.
Good Velcro area for like mountain suspension and battery stuff and counterweights and all that. So really good stuff there. And then also, like, there might be some specialty pouches that are worth having. So if you want to store, like, some guys will store the extra batteries for their, like, headlights or their lighting systems that are mounted to their helmet. They'll store the batteries for that, like, somewhere on the helmet as well. So it's all kind of in there, ready to go. Again, you got to think about weight. I've seen dudes run, like, tourniquets on the back of their helmets.
Yeah.
There's, like, all kinds of specialty stuff that guys will run.
And which is, I mean, if you're trying to gain, like, like some guys say, hey, yeah, I'm just going to put, counterweights. But if you can put usable equipment as weight, that might be a good option as well. Like you said, you got batteries. I put batteries on the back of mine, and it's a little bit of weight. It's not much, but, it helps. So it makes me not have to run as many weights maybe or whatever.
Yeah.
Depends on what I'm running. But
right.
Yeah. So if you're trying to balance the weight anyways, if you can balance it with actual useful equipment, that's good too. You got to think about the fact that you may have to remove that. So if it's like a piece of equipment that you're having to remove and you're kind of banking on it to, like, be that final piece to counterweight, then maybe it's not the best idea. But if it's something that's like a tourniquet that's more of like an emergency use anyways,
yeah,
you should have more than just that tourniquet that's on the back of your head anyways. But, like, you should have some on your kit.
Yeah,
other than
absolutely.
That.
Yeah.
So, and it's like a last ditch effort kind of thing. Like this, but we're going to this one.
Yeah.
But I'm not saying that you should do that. I'm just saying it's not a bad idea and a kind of a cool way to think. Kind of going back to the helmet covers, like the scrim and stuff like that, is also can be really important for, like, helmet covers.
Yeah.
Kind of breaks up that shape a little bit more. You can tie in vegetation and really, like, mask. Depends on your mission, but you can definitely, like, mask how your helmet looks.
Yep.
And it's kind of an easy way. Like, helmet covers are kind of hard to take on and off, where scrim is pretty easy to throw on and off. So if you're going into a cold snap, or, like, you're going into the winter season, you're going to get lots of snow, like camouflage scrim that's, like, more for that time of the year is easier to just throw on versus having to swap out your entire helmet cover.
Yeah.
So.
Yep.
Or repaint your helmet.
Yeah.
I think scrim's a faster way to camouflage.
For sure.
Because it's usually just basically camo net with a shot cord routed through it that, like, wraps around the helmet.
Yep. Yeah, that's pretty much it for, like, your helmet mounted equipment. I mean, this is very specialized to you. I think the biggest things are your considerations for comms and night vision.
Yeah.
So, but a lot of the stuff we listed is just support for your night vision. So, like, if you have night vision, these are things you probably need too,
Yeah.
And it's really nice because that stuff follows that helmet. So it's all mounted on that helmet, and wherever your helmet goes, that stuff goes too. So
yeah, you're not going to leave anything behind that way.
It's kind of nice.
Yep.
So some other considerations that you want to get into would be just overall fitment and like proper positioning of the helmet itself. And we kind of already talked a lot about this, but make sure before you buy a helmet, or even if you have a helmet, make sure it's properly sized.
Yeah.
It's got to fit on your head. So, like, especially if you're buying one, take the time to, like, run a tape measure around your head,
Yeah. And
every manufacturer is going to have specific instructions on how that needs to be done. They'll explain it pretty well.
Yep.
Make sure you understand that and you size it and get the right size. We talked a lot about pad layout already, but make sure they're positioned in a manner that makes sense. Like, run those pads. Like, take the time necessary to really wear in that helmet.
Yeah.
And don't be afraid to change it up. If it feels a little too tight, play with your pad layout. If it's wobbling around,
I will say that there's
much,
a little bit of a break in too, so don't just give up on a pad layout just because you were like, nope, that just doesn't work, and you just move on to the next thing. Like, I see guys do that with gear all the time. It's like, I can't get this rucksack to ride right, so I'm just gonna switch up my rucksack. And it's like, dude, did you even give that thing enough time to, like,
Yeah.
try to actually figure it out, or did you just kind of like give up on it super fast?
Yeah. People need to stop chasing comfort. Like, this stuff is not comfortable necessarily.
Yeah, it's going to be way more comfortable just cruise around in your,
Underwear.
sweatpants and
Yeah.
a nice hoodie, yeah, it's going to be much more comfortable, but that's not what it is. Like,
no.
And I think if all the things that the military did for me, it made me realize, like, you don't need to be that comfortable to be good at this job.
Yeah.
But then it's also made me appreciate how comfortable, like, the nicer stuff is.
Yeah, for sure.
So it's like been like double-sided. It's like, yeah, I can be uncomfortable and still be effective, but then it's like, holy crap, like what I got issued was trash.
That's the part that kills me, especially specifically with helmets, is like the amount of people I've been around that put on like a Team Wendy or like an OpsCore helmet or something, and they're like, oh man, is it supposed to just kind of be uncomfortable? And I'm like, what? Like, yeah, it's like, it's just kind of giving me a headache. It's like, well, yeah, you're wearing nods and you've got a big giant thing on your head, but I promise you, that's a comfortable helmet.
Yeah.
Like, I promise you.
Yeah. And that's not to be said to just be like, oh, I guess it just sucks. Like, it's just supposed to suck.
Yeah.
Like, still play around with it. Try to get it as comfortable as you can. Like, it is your helmet. You got to be able to wear it for long, extended periods of time. So,
yeah.
Definitely try to mess around with it. Try to get it as comfortable as you possibly can get it. But at the same time, know that it's not going to be as comfortable as wearing a baseball cap. Like, that's just the reality of it.
Yeah, you've got a bunch of weight up there that you're supporting. But, yeah. I don't know. It just I like that you brought that up. I think it's very important to give it the time. Make sure your suspension system is sized right. Like, man, I can't tell you how many people I've seen running the most jerjambly, just cattywampus, like weird
like
chin
you're
straps.
saying, like cinched up on one side,
Yeah,
and the helmet's
dude.
just crooked.
Like, straighten that thing out.
Just looking ate up.
Just looking like a bag of just I don't know, just a sack of
Wieners.
potatoes, dude. Yeah. It's so frustrating. It's like one side's all tightened down all the way, the other side's all loose, and the chin strap's up by their temple, like the buckle,
Yeah.
It's just like, dude, no. You look like you look ate up.
Yep.
It's gonna ride way more comfortable if it's all symmetrical and sized properly. Yeah, and then again, we talked about it, but like if you're gonna run a headset on a band, then your pad layout needs to be, and your sizing and everything needs to be adjusted accordingly to fit over that. Or if you're gonna have integrated comms mounted to the helmet, then size it up and position it accordingly. Those headsets should sit right over your ears.
Yep.
They shouldn't have to be like getting moved around or like running at a weird angle. Like, they should sit directly over your ears. So adjust them accordingly. Yeah, and then you kind of, the last thing I had on my little list was
my bad. I jumped ahead.
camouflage. You kind of already covered it, but yeah, I was just gonna say
I looked at that as like kind of a form of helmet cover, so I just jumped in there.
Yeah, but I mean, just basically what Steven was saying earlier. I mean, there's a bunch of people that make nice little camo net kind of covers, and then you can buy like different kinds of scrim, like you were talking about.
Yeah, like we run the OPE. Right?
Yeah, OPE gear.
I went in confident, then I questioned it. I was like, "Am I right here?"
Well, I always get them confused with OP Tactical, but they're different. OPE gear, I think, is who makes the camo nets.
Yeah,
for the helmets, and then they make scrim as well that you can tie into it, and super simple. It does a lot. Like, I think everybody's running it on their helmets now in our little contingency, but it works good. Like, it breaks up the outline of the helmet. A lot of the stuff that you mount to helmets is kind of, weird shaped and kind of angular and sometimes kind of shiny. Like those IFF devices sometimes are kind of shiny, not necessarily reflective, but if you saw it, like, it'd look a little weird. So
yeah.
I feel like if you can eyeball that, though, you've probably seen something else. That's kind of a tiny specific item to just see, but it's just those camo nets help a lot. So, and there's covers, that offer camouflage too. Like, you've got different covers that have, like, they might be multicam or something, and I think you're going to get a lot more camouflage.
Out of like a camo net with scrim, yeah.
Yeah.
It's just going to break up the pattern more. Like, there's not very many things in, like, that are natural that are just, like, shaped like a helmet out there walking around.
Yeah.
So, the more you can camouflage, the better. You don't want to get seen. Like we always say, you should be trying to avoid a gunfight, you know. So, I think it's important to camo up. It's just like using face paint. Like, you can't be just shining your face all around and expecting not to get caught. So, yeah.
Yeah. Yep. I mean, that's pretty much it. I think we kind of just blasted through it, but
yeah, we
it's
did.
pretty straightforward.
It's because the information that's so there's so much, like, of all those individual things we hit that you mount to your helmet that you just have to go up and you just got to go look at. I mean, we're going to try to do our best to cover some of these more individual items, like more specifically in future podcasts. But I think it's important to understand, like, your helmet's also a form of LBE, but it's also a form of body armor as well.
Yep.
So I think once you understand that that's its job, that's kind of its two jobs, you understand kind of how to set it up a little bit more and, like, the importance of having a helmet, you know, in the modern Minuteman role.
I agree. I think that sums it up pretty good.
I am the number one most impactful artist of our generation. I am Shakespeare in the flesh. Walt Disney, Nike, Google.
Why don't you empower yourself and don't need them and do it yourself?
How, Sway?
Take a few steps back to go.
You ain't got the answers, man. You ain't got the answers. You ain't got the answers. You ain't got the answers, Sway.
Kanye,
I've been doing this more than you.
Doing what?
You ain't got.
Come on, chill out.
You ain't got the answers.